Yay, second day I've remembered to record. Okay, where are you going? All right, so today we're going to talk about pose analysis. So you know that you guys have got to choose 3 poses, right? Poses that you can't do yet. Send them to Laura. It's in ages still, but you can send them to her beforehand if you like. And then Laura will tick them off and say, yes, that's fine, you can do those, right? The only reason, like I said yesterday, that you need to tell Laura is because she may want you to do something that she feels you need to work on a little bit more for your pose demo. And I had a quick look at, skimmed through your pose demos yesterday, and your practices are looking good. And Laura has said she's got no kind of, there's no red flags, there's no alert, so it's looking good so far. So you need to think of a pose or poses that you would like to do, you can't do, and you've got to figure out why, all right? So it ties directly into sequencing. Same stuff, okay? So this is just going to guide you towards sequencing. So, like we said yesterday, and I'll say it again, you can choose a pose for your pose analysis that is also your sequencing pose, okay? So that kind of helps you just in terms of time for yourselves, you know, so that you don't have to do 4 poses, you can do 3, and 1 can kind of double up, so it'll help you. If you want to, it's totally and utterly up to you, okay? That's got to be approved by me, the yoga sequencing pose, right? But you're still quite early in the course. This afternoon, you're going to work on arm balances, so you're starting to be exposed to more and more and more. So it's totally up to you. If you want to submit your poses to us for pose analysis before the due date, which is 4th of October, and your sequencing pose, you are more than welcome to. Or you can wait a bit and explore some of the poses more with Laura, so you've got a little bit more understanding of where you can go with the pose. It's entirely up to you. As long as we get it by the 4th of October, you can send us a message about it anytime. Okay, all right. So the first thing is with the pose analysis, you know that there's a video, pose analysis video, which I presume most of you've watched already. And at the end of that video, there are, I can't remember off the top of my head, there are about 3 examples of what people have submitted before. And in your course overview, there are a whole load of examples in, you know, that little booklet that's got pretty much all the bits of your course in it. There are examples at the end of that of real live trainees who've submitted pose analysis. So it's to give you an idea, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about the homework around it. But the long and short of it is, if you look at those examples, they will give you ideas. What I want to see from you is I want to see you breaking down the pose, which we're going to talk about now. I want to see you looking at that breakdown of the pose and looking at your body, okay? How your body works with the pose, okay? And mind, depending on what you're doing, all right? Body and mind, how that works. What may be going on that's stopping you from doing it, and how you can maybe explore modifications around that to help you get a little bit further. So there's no exact answer. What I'm looking for you to show me is that you are starting to be able to explore these things that you're learning on the course and apply them to yourself. Okay, so it's a little bit creative, it's a little bit up to you. You can send it to me in any form. I think all of you are pretty fine with software and things like that, so you can send it to me on any format. If you really are like, I can't do pictures on a document, then you can send me the document and you can send me the pictures or the videos via WhatsApp, as long as you label them so I can tie them in together. Okay, so Any questions around that as you go along? You just ask. Okay, so today we're going to talk really specifically about pose analysis. It's the same stuff that you're going to do for your homework and for your pose analysis homework and for your sequencing as well. So what we do is we take a pose, and the pose can be a basic pose, it can be a complex pose, a more advanced pose, it doesn't matter, right? And then we need to look at the pose and we need to go rate it according to strength requirements, flexibility requirements, skill requirements, okay, for pose analysis. So those are the three main categories, right? So you need to look at a specific pose and you need to go, okay, what am I seeing here in terms of strength? What's the requirement of this particular pose in terms of strength? Now that can also be that there's no requirement. So let's take splits as an example. We'll work through a couple of different examples. So what strength requirement do you think, because we rated out of 5, this idea of rating it out of 5 actually came from a teacher trainee, and I thought it was a really good way of looking at it, okay? So in terms of splits, what rating would you give splits on the strength level required out of 5? Raquel is saying 1.
1 being the least, and 5
1 being the least, yes, and 5 being, whoa, you need a lot of strength.
And
Sarah's saying 2.
3. Is it just
Nicole's saying 3. Okay, Dash is saying 3. Okay, so.
Is it seated splits though, or standing?
Oh no, proper splits on the ground.
Okay, then 1.
Standing splits. Okay, so seated splits, not seated splits, you know what I mean, splits on the ground, front splits on the ground. Okay, so let's look at the pose. What's the front leg doing in a kind of muscular joint thing?
It's in hip flexion.
It's in hip flexion. So what's that mean in yoga? Like, keep it simple. Like, you can do the joint movement. I don't mind, of course. But what happens when you're in hip flexion in a yoga pose like splits?
You're stretching your hamstrings.
You're stretching, right? Stretching hamstrings big time. Okay? All right. Now let's look at the back leg. What's happening to the back leg? Where is it? If we looked at it in terms of, you said hip flexion for the front leg, what's the back leg doing?
Hip extension.
Hip extension. Good, guys. So what happens to those muscles in the back leg if we're taking the leg back to that degree of hip extension?
stretching the quads.
Stretching the quads, right? Okay, so the front leg is hamstring stretching. The back leg is quad stretching. So where's the strength requirement?
4.
Dasha, sorry, did you say something?
The core.
The
Core.
core. Okay, so remember yesterday we talked a little bit about the Jenny Rowling's lunge, and it was on the group, and I put Raquela under a lot of pressure to answer, she's laughing, to answer the question around splits. So what shape is the spine in splits? The lower back. Stefan, you said something, but I can't hear it. I can see your mouth moving.
The flexion, isn't it?
So I can't hear you, sorry.
Maybe flexion, because the pelvis is tilting up.
Okay, so if you look at, think about, I don't know how many of you watched the Jenny Rowling's thing, okay? So when you forward bend, what shape does your pelvis, where is it moving?
Anterior.
Anterior, it's going forward, okay? In splits, remember I showed you yesterday, in hip extension, how much can you take the leg back? You don't have to give me degrees, but how much? Not a lot, right? Remember I showed you. Yes, exactly. Sarah's saying this much. So in order for me to take the leg back further, what shape does my lower back have to become?
Banana shaped.
Banana shaped. Who said that? That's brilliant. Okay, Alicia, yes, because look, if I show you, if I can only take mine, there's my back in a neutral space, I take the leg back to here, that's hip extension. If I want to take it back further, I have to arch. I come into more of an arch in my back. Okay, so in splits, if you look at it, your back, look, the front leg is doing one thing, the back leg is doing another thing, but fundamentally for everybody, you come into an arch. So what is that shape? When we come into an arch, what's our spine doing?
Flexion.
Going back? What's going back?
Extension.
Extension. So spinal extension, all right? So for splits, when we go into spinal extension and we bend back, what do you think is happening to the tummy muscles, the core muscles?
Stretching.
Stretching and
Stretching.
contraction.
Okay, you got it. Yes. So when I go back into a back bend, and put your hands on your stomach now. If you're driving, don't. Alicia's driving. All right. Okay. Put your hands on your stomach now and
So am I,
roll
sorry.
forward like a sit-up. Okay. Right. Now imagine you were doing a sit-up. What would your tummy be doing then? Your tummy muscles.
Scrunching. Tightening.
Tightening, contracting, pulling you into flexion. Now, put your hand on your tummy muscle and now bend backwards and kind of hover suspended.
Eccentric.
Okay?
Eccentric.
Eccentric if you're
contraction.
lowering. Yes, yes. Eccentric if you're like lengthening, stretching. Okay? Which is the same, not to a huge extent, in splits. So in splits, our core, if we're referring to abdominal muscles, stretched. Okay, so let's think further. Where is there strength? Is there a strength requirement in splits? And when we talk about strength, we're talking about being strong, like a contraction of muscles being strong.
No.
Isn't the stomach muscles strengthening and contracting at the same time because it has
No,
to hold
not
together
in
with-
splits. The only time muscles are strengthening and stretching at the same time is if we're working eccentrically, lowering, so we've got to be moving, okay? And we've got load, okay? That's the only time they can be doing both at the same time, okay? It's the same kind of thing if we're lying on our back and we take a strap and we pull our leg up and the hamstrings are stretching, but we're not adding any load, so they're not strengthening. So in splits, if we looked at it in eccentric, concentric, and isometric, what would splits be? Which contraction?
Isometric.
Isometric.
Symmetric.
Isometric, it's still, right?
Still.
You're in shape. You've stuck one leg out in front, one leg out in the back, and here you are in splits, okay, or folded forward. But it's a static pose. So splits is all about stretching, okay? Within splits, you can get crazy if you teach splits, and you can get people to lift up in splits where they draw their heels towards each other and then they lift up, and then you're bringing a strengthening element into it. But splits is your classic stretch everything pose. Okay? It stretches, it's got a bit of hip external rotation, it's stretching your hamstrings, it's stretching your quads. It's probably, besides Natarajanasana, full dancers, our biggest stretch pose in yoga. It's all about stretching, okay? What do you think? So we would say then that the strength level required for splits is, you could say 1, That's fine. 1 or none. Let's say 1. But it means when you're only saying 1, we don't have to do a lot of work around the strength elements for splits, okay? Now, if you had to rate it in flexibility requirements, what would you give it out of 5?
5.
5, okay? See, like totally different, okay? Strength, great. And what about skill? Now, skill, to be very clear about skill, skill is where you have to understand actions of a pose. You might have to repeat poses. It's where your brain comes into it. So skill is very much about brain learning, right? Patterning, development, understanding what you need to do that will help you achieve a pose, right? What level do you think splits is required at out of 5?
Well, you need to have your hips in the right direction, and you need to have you don't want to over arch your back, and you also don't want to lean too much forward. So you want your hips up, your chest open, so, and pointing in the right way for the split. So there is some skill in there. You can't just, it's not just about your legs being, all flexible. You have to do it right and get the core engaged. And so skill, I actually don't know. So it's either very little or maybe just, I don't know, 2, 3.
Okay. All right. So here's a question. If I show you how to do splits, if I do splits in front of you, is it going to help you do splits?
To get the position right.
So okay. Okay, so this is going to go down a dark hole of anatomy, all right, with splits. Okay, the only way you can do splits is if you've got enough hamstring flexibility and quad flexibility. End of story, right? Okay, so if you've got that, you can look at a picture of splits, which I think you all know what splits look like, right? You can put the one leg in front and the other leg behind and slide yourself into that position. The skill level is almost 0. I'd give it a 1 as well, okay? The way your hips are is going to be dictated by the level of flexibility and your hip shape. So this is a really complicated thing, and it will become more obvious as you go through the course. I'm going to put it out there now, all right? So I showed you that you only have a little bit of hip extension, right? When I stood up now and I took my leg behind, it only went like a little bit. You all saw that, right? Nod if you did. If you don't, I'll do it again, right? It only went a little bit behind. So say about 20 degrees roundabout behind. I don't care if you know degrees, but that's 90, okay? Right angle, that's 45. So it's about that much. That's all I can take my leg behind in hip extension, okay? So how much do you think my leg is behind me in splits? Is it 20?
Not at 180 degrees.
It looks like 180 degrees. I get what you mean because you're looking at the front leg and the back leg, right? Okay. If we just take the back leg. So think about a picture of splits. Somebody's body is up, torso is upright, and their legs are behind. What is that shape?
Degrees.
90 degrees.
I'd say closer to 90.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So now I've taken my leg back 90 degrees, but nobody in the world, rephrase, no one except a contortionist. Everybody know what a contortionist is? Those are those people that can do those are those people you see on Instagram and you go, oh no, that's just scary, okay? Those people, not a single person I have ever met on a teacher training can take their hip back further than 20 degrees. So the question is, where is the 70 coming from? Because we're at 90, okay? There's 20 and there's another 70 that we need to go into splits, okay? So this is tricky. I'm just putting it out there. Jenny Rowlings gave a little bit of it. She said, in her lunge thing, in order to actually get that back leg behind you a bit, you normally come into a little bit of a back bend, first of all. Okay? The body works in task form. If you say to it, and you've got the flexibility levels, I want to put my leg back in splits, it's going to use all the different joints around that to try and get you to that position. Okay? The first one is most people are in a little bit of an anterior tilt. So in other words, their lower back's arched a little bit. That gives them a little bit more room to maneuver, okay? The other thing is, and this is where it's very, very, very tricky. And what I'm going to do is I'll send you a video because it's easier to explain it like that, okay? I'll send you pictures and video. In order for you to go into splits, you have to take your back leg into hip external rotation. Everybody know that? That's when you're turning the hip out to the side, okay? So literally everybody in splits has got their back leg in hip external rotation. This is very tricky to understand, so I will send you pictures. So I'm just admitting, there we go. So there is no one is able to square the hips in splits. Okay? Has Laura talked to you about squaring the hips in standing splits yet? Yes? No? No? Not yet. Okay, so I'll get it to show you this afternoon. All right, so if I take my leg up, I'm going to demonstrate it for you. You see, in standing splits, if I square my hip, because I've only got 15 degrees, I'm not born, so excuse me, I've only got 15 degrees of hip extension, this, okay? Only 15 degrees. So if I square my hips, can you all see me? Okay? If I square my hips in standing splits, I take the leg up, I keep it square. That's as much as I can go, right? I can't go any more than that. If I want to take the leg up higher, I turn my foot out, my hip out, and I go up. Okay? It's hot, upside down, okay?
Sorry, Catherine, she has gone through that with us. We've discussed it, like warrior 3, keeping the hip square, and then as the split goes, they have to rotate outwards.
Okay, so that's exactly, so when I took my leg up, keeping the hips square, it looks like I'm taking my leg into hip extension, but I'm not. But if I lifted my torso up, it would be as if I'm standing straight. Do you understand that? So it would be like me doing this. So either I'm down here and I've got my leg to here, I can't go any further. It's exactly the same thing as me doing like a warrior 3 against the wall here. And you can see that my hip's not going past my body. So it's not in hip extension. A lot of you actually said that in warrior 3. It's not in hip extension. For us to get further than 20 degrees, we have to allow hip external rotation. We don't need to instruct it, it just happens, okay? We want the leg to go higher, you just take the leg higher. Your hip, if your external rotation is okay, will just do its thing and take it up higher. And the reason I'm telling you this is because a lot of this will come out as you start to learn more and more and more. The more you say square the hips, you need to understand the anatomy of hips and how they work. If you say square the hips in standing splits or in normal splits, you're going to reduce the amount the person can take their hip back into extension, which is totally cool. No problem. It just means you've just got to understand that they can't go any further. If you want them to go further, you've got to allow them to externally rotate the leg and then at the hip, and then it goes up. Haida.
Yes, can you, so just to clarify, in three-legged dog, you don't externally rotate, right? You keep it.
Yeah, look, it really depends. And this is why I want you guys to kind of start thinking out of the box a little bit. Everything depends on, first of all, your body. Everybody's body is different. And second of all, what you're doing it for. So think about three-legged dogs. So we take the leg up in three-legged dog, right? We can keep the hips square. Then the leg's not going to go so high, right? Okay. Most of the time people take it higher, right? So what do we do when we do flip the dog?
Yeah, then you have to externally rotate.
Exactly. So both are totally cool. They are just doing different stuff, and it depends what we want to do and we want our clients to do. Okay. So if we want to, one of your poses is splits or flip the dog, we need to, or even standing splits, and you want to take your leg really high, we have to allow the hips not to be straight and to allow, the body will just do it. Like, you don't have to instruct external rotation. You just, if you say, take the leg as high as you can to your people or to yourself, your leg will go higher. That's it. It'll just, because the body's clever, the nervous system goes, you know, Hader wants to take a leg really high, it'll just do its thing and it'll try and find a way of getting it high. But in terms of, sorry, Hader?
Sorry, no, I just wanted to ask you something else, and this is maybe a bit late, but I've been wondering if I'm in, if I want to go up into three-legged dog from downward dog, do I keep my legs, my feet as it is, because they're now hip width apart, right? Because it's from plank, downward dog. Now, if I lift those legs, do I move it to the center, or do I stay in that position where it's now, you know, my legs are still hip width apart? Does it go up right there, or do I move it in?
Again, it's a great question, because actually a lot of these very quite simple things that we do in classes, people don't really explain, and then we don't really think, we think about more complex stuff. So it's an excellent question. So if you were teaching a class, or you're in a class and the class is quite fast and you're in your downward dog and then they go three-legged dog, right leg high, you're not going to have any time to bring your feet together, which would be much more stable, right? Because the wider apart your legs are, that's great if you've got two legs on the ground, but the minute you want to take one leg up and do a whole load of stuff about it, if you brought the feet together, or the left foot to the midline, and then took the right leg up, you would have much more stability on that one, just because of, literally, it's like a tripod. You'd be making a tripod rather than a skew one. Both are fine. It's entirely dependent on, if it's a fast flow, people just position their feet where they are, they take a leg up, etc. Or if you wanted to do something quite, say, for instance, three-legged dog, then you're reaching back and trying to grab your foot, having your other foot in the middle would give you a lot more stability for most people. I mean, you could do it with your legs wide apart, but it could also, that's more of a balance challenge. So all good.
You then, if you, sorry, the dogs are a mission.
Yeah.
If I'm in my downward dog and I lift the one leg and I also want to go into the, you know, where I'm lifting the opposite arm, then it would be better to have it, you know, still at hip width, because it balances it out. Rather than
think out of the box. Think about what we were talking about yesterday, where we talked about progressively loading poses, right? So we can do that in everything. So nothing is bad, right? It just depends on who you're teaching, where they're at, how much they are, and all of these things are challenging. So we don't always have to give the, you know, plank with your hands under your shoulders, feet hip distance apart. That's your basic plank, right? Then we can also do plank, bring your feet together, take one arm up, plank, feet wide apart, other arm up, hands further forward. I like my hands going like this, hands further back, hands wider apart, all of those things. So some are easier because the load is easier, and others become more challenging. So it's like a spectrum. Everything's on a spectrum, like forward bending for splits that we talked about yesterday. If we were prepping for splits and we wanted to see, how would I see in a class who would be, oh, Dash has got her hand up. Sorry, let me stop babbling and answer a question for a change.
I wanted to ask you, Catherine, in the 3 poses that we have, do we have to achieve the pose, or can we break it down and then say, this is what I've tried, I haven't achieved the pose, or is the aim we have to achieve it?
No achieving the pose. I want to see your thought process around it. So no achieving the pose. You don't have to be able to do the pose. I want you to come and say to me, I tried this, this, and this, but my hamstrings aren't so long. I've realized I'm a runner and my quads are, you know, a bit tight, etc. If we were talking about something like splits. Yeah, I want you to, I tried it with bolsters underneath me. I tried for 2 weeks to kind of maybe stretch my hamstrings a little bit more. That didn't work, etc. So it's just an understanding around the pose. Okay, right. So moving on, right? So we've looked at something like splits, forward bend. So we can see that that pose particularly is largely a flexibility pose. So you'd have to look at people's flexibility if you were even going to offer splits or work towards it. So what poses could we offer either in your pose analysis to assess yourself or in a class? How could we figure out quite quickly whether people had the flexibility or not for splits?
Deep lunge?
Say, Hader, did you say lunge?
Yeah, deep lunge.
Deep lunge, absolutely. Before that, even before, for hamstrings.
Forward fold, wide-legged seated forward fold.
Exactly, all of the above. Easy. If somebody can fold forward in Paschimottanasana, legs together, folded forward, we know that they've got quite a good chance of being not bad at splits, okay? Their hamstrings are quite flexible. And then we have to look at the quads at the back. So then things like lunges, low lunges, all of those kind of things would give us some kind of idea of, okay, that person's quite flexible, right? So our class for splits would be full of hamstring stretching and quad stretching, because we don't have to offer any strength. There's hardly any skill. You know, we could even bring in, it's tricky for you guys right at the moment, but we could even bring in that hip external rotation action by allowing people to turn the hip out in a 3-legged dog, in standing splits, all of those things. And then we pretty much, there's your splits for you, okay? Then in the final pose, moving towards, if you were teaching splits or if you're doing it at home in your own training, then you would modify splits. And how could you modify splits?
Could you use blocks?
Exactly, blocks, bolsters, holding onto a chair, anything that you're going to support basically people from being on the ground. Because splits is, I don't know, can anybody do splits here? Nick can do splits. Yeah.
Not now. I used to be able to when I did gymnastics, but yeah, I don't know how to get back into it.
You will just stretch a lot. Do eccentrically loaded stretching, you'll be there in no time. Okay, if you've done it before, you'll be fine doing it again. So, and everybody else, I'm sure you guys, I don't know if you've all tried splits, but splits is horrible for people who can't do splits, right? Like really horrible. I used to teach it a lot to my advanced students, of which I would say maybe 5% could get close to split. The rest of them literally wanted to vomit. I mean, I'm really not exaggerating. It's horrendous. It's really, oh, I mean, your whole nervous system goes into like, what is this person doing to me? Even so, having things like bolsters, even more than blocks, bolsters which are comfy, like really comfy to sit on and remain higher, is that people can then go, the nervous system relaxes a little bit more and goes, hey, you know, right here, this is not so bad. And then you lower a little bit more, still not so bad, and then a little bit more to, nervous system is on. And remember yesterday we talked about what do they think controls, besides bones and ligaments and all of that stuff, how far we stretch. Stefan, exactly. Our nervous system, our brain and our nervous system. The minute we get stretched too much, too far, too quickly for the nervous system, it will send messages to all of the little receptors around the area saying, stop immediately. And what message does it send? What does it feel like?
Sensation.
It's sensation. And what sensation?
Pain.
Sharp,
Pain.
sharp pain, yeah.
Sharp pain. Okay, exactly. It's like a pain sensation depending on how far you go. The nervous system is sending you a message. It's the same in pain. It's sending you a message to give you an alarm bell sign saying stop right now. And the way it does that is by making you hurt, right? It's a real thing. So it sends you those messages. So when we're doing stretching work, the best is to do it progressively, like everything, you know, like chaturanga strength, like stretching strength. Do it progressively. Let your nervous system think, hey, this is not so bad. I'm feeling okay here, and progressively train it. Okay, so moving on, because I want to cover a couple of categories, right? So Titivasana, firefly. This should be a relatively easy one for you because there's a video on it, etc., etc. All right, so firefly. Everybody know what it looks like? Nod, even if you're lying. Okay, that's fine. I don't want to know that you don't know because then you haven't watched the video. Okay, all right. So what shape are your legs in?
Reflection.
Wide-legged shape.
Just normal, like you don't have to say hip flexion. What shape? What are they doing? Show me with your hands.
The V shape.
Yep.
V shape, yeah? Okay, they're V shape. What does it look like in terms of another pose that looks like Titivasana but isn't Titivasana? That's not on your arm.
Wide forward fold.
Wide forward fold. Got it. Perfect. Right? Looks like that. And a whole host of other things that we talked about as well. What does it look like standing? Standing forward fold. Wide leg forward fold. Yeah, it's just basically your hamstrings are being stretched and your inner thighs are being stretched a bit as well. Okay, so in terms of flexibility, how much flexibility do we need for firefly? Out of 5, would you say, to make firefly easy? 5, yeah. So the more flexible somebody is, if they can lie flat in a wide-legged forward fold or put their body between their legs in prasarita, in your standing forward fold, the easier firefly is going to be. So it needs a lot of warming up of hamstrings and stuff. Okay, how much strength and where do you think firefly needs?
5.
Shoulders and arms.
5?
5.
Yeah, I would say a little bit less, but that might just be me because, but it's a big issue, right? It's a kind of like, you've got to be able to support the weight of your body, not all of it. I mean, yes and no, your legs on your arms, okay? So it's quite a chunky requirement of strength. What about skill? How much skill does firefly need, do you think? And it's no exact answer, but just, you know.
I think like 5.
5.
Yeah, also quite a fair amount of skill.
Yeah.
A fair amount of skill. So you can see if you look at something like splits, where you've pretty much given it a full 5 as flexibility requirements, not a lot of strength, 1 maybe, and almost 1 for skill. But firefly is actually got a lot of, you know, it's like maybe 4 or 5 for flexibility, 4 or 5 for strength, 4 or 5 for skill, right? So they're totally different things, okay? So firefly, and Laura's going to go through arm balances with you this afternoon. Arm balances require, I heard her saying it to you yesterday, they require let's talk strength first. Okay, so how would you determine if somebody had enough strength? Say they can fold forward, bang, in a wide-legged forward fold. How would you just determine if they had enough strength to hold firefly?
If they could do crow.
Absolutely. If they can do crow, they can pretty much do firefly. What about even before that?
Forward fold, you can lean forward.
You could get, that's a brilliant sequencing idea, okay? That's where we're talking about leaning forward. That's skill, okay? Not strength. You do get a bit of strength in there, but you can't really determine how much strength someone has by doing that, all right? Unless they can press up to a handstand. What else can we do? Something really simple.
Chaturanga and plank.
Plank, yes. Okay, so plank, so if you look at the arm balances, they've all got different shapes of arms. Most of them, what we call the beginner arm balances. You'll all laugh if you can't do arm balance. You'll think they're not beginner, but they are bent arms. They chaturanga arms, right? And then we put stuff on top of it. But firefly, what do the arms look like in firefly? Straight. Okay, so the person is leaning with straight arms forward. So we can easily go, here's a plank, lean a little bit forward, or even not, just lean a little bit forward, hold for 5-10 seconds, and then we would know that the person isn't, you know, I'm not sure where you guys are on your planks at the moment, so, but you know, we get people coming in as trainees, and when they hold a plank for 2 seconds, they kind of shake already. And then we know, maybe firefly or straight arm balances, they might not be ready for that yet. But we can determine that. It doesn't need, it is strength, but it's not the hugest. Chaturanga needs way more strength. Okay? So there we've gone, we've determined flexibility, strength, and now skill. Okay, what skill, and I know you guys haven't done your arm balances yet, what stuff is going on in arm balances? What do we need to kind of figure out, do you think? Being people that have tried to figure out arm balances, I'm sure.
Balance.
Drishti.
Drishti, balance. Somebody else said something else?
Drishi.
Sorry, Fiona?
Drishi. I don't know if I'm saying it right.
It's like, you can even say focus. Yeah, look, you don't have to use Sanskrit words. It's all good, right? People don't teach with Sanskrit unless you are Iyengar out there anyway. Okay, so we know that with any balance, whether you're standing on one leg or standing on your hands or in an arm balance, that you have to look where you want to go, right? That's the thing. And you will see when people do little crows, the first thing they do when they are learning to do a crow is they will drop their head and they will look down. Okay? I think I said in the video, and my husband said, you know, if you're mountain biking, do not look at the rocks because you will hit the rock. You have to look where you want to go. Okay? In an arm balance, we talked about it, it's a seesaw. Your feet are on the ground. Let's do it with one hand. These are your feet. This is your shoulders. In order for me to get my feet off the ground, I have to lean, right? I have to lean forward. I'm not going down. I have to lean forward. So I need to look forward, okay? I need to lean forward. But even before that, the most important things about arm balance, all arm balances is you're doing stuff with your legs on your arms, okay? That's it, right? You're doing stuff with your legs on your arms. Your legs are in different shapes on your arms, okay? So we'll talk about flexibility in a second, right? So in an arm balance, in terms of skill, we have to get you to find where you put your legs on your arms. Because you can't just put them on your arms. It doesn't work like that, right? So if you look at something like firefly compared to crow, what's the difference in the legs on the arms? In crow, where are your legs?
your legs are resting on your triceps, whereas in your firefly, your legs are straight out into V shape.
Yes, it's totally different shape, first of all. Normal beginners, Bakasana, crow, your arms are bent like this, and you've normally got, I don't know if you guys can see, oh, I'm going to push over my whole table. You've normally got your upper arm against your knee and shin, like that, right? To the side. Do we all know that? Yes? Nod, don't, ask, okay? So normally, if I do it in front, our knees are slightly out to the side in our Bakasana. Whereas in Titivasana, it becomes firefly, it becomes really difficult because our arms are straight, pretty much, if you're doing it an easy firefly. Because our arms are straight, I don't have a shelf, okay? So the minute I bend my arms, I can put stuff on it. The minute I straighten my arms, not a lot of shelf, right? So the people that can do firefly really easily are the people that can put their legs so high up, they use their shoulder as a shelf, okay? So this is really key. So if somebody's not that flexible, they can't get their leg up here. It's impossible, right? Their leg's going to be here. So for somebody that's not that flexible, they're going to have to bend their arms slightly to create a shelf. They won't be able to do firefly with the straight arm. Because most people, I had a trainee on the 300 hour we did this year, one of the most flexible people I've seen, and really little. Tiny, tiny, tiny girl, but woman, I should say. Tiny, tiny, tiny. I think she must have weighed like 42 kilograms or something like that. Super flexy. So when she did firefly, her legs went up here, literally up there, and she would be in firefly, and then she could chat to you. Like, she just hang out. It's no strength required, huge amounts of flexibility, chat, 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 no load because your legs are so light, whatever. So there's different degrees. So in arm balances, the skill is where do you put your legs? And not only where do you put your legs, where do you put your legs for your body? Okay? And that depends on what arm balance it is. In something like firefly, if you watch the video, you have to wriggle into the position, whereas something like crow, it's much more important about just placing your legs so you can come into a malasana and teach the people where to place their legs on their upper arms. Does that make a little bit of sense? Okay. Then the skill, what is the biggest drawback? I'm going to get to you now, Hader. What is the biggest drawback for people learning arm balances? If they've got the flexibility, you've taught them the skill, they've got the strength required. What is the biggest thing that gets in the way?
Fear.
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 Yes. So fear is a skill situation. So how would we address it?
Blanket in the front too, so they feel a bit safer if they maybe fall forward, or maybe put them on blocks.
Up against a wall.
Up against the wall, blocks, you in front of them, which you're going to do in the adjustment stuff that you'll do later in the course, right? And progression, okay? Everything is about progressively training yourself and your people, okay? Because something like Bakasana crow, we can normally get people over the fear fairly quickly, right? Once they start to do it a couple of times, they maybe just get their arms in the right position, their shins in the right position, and they may just lean forward. That's it. Feet don't come off the ground, all fine. Then you might put their feet on blocks, and then that makes them have to lean forward a little bit more because they're a bit higher up. And it's ooh, a bit scary, okay? But feet aren't coming up. And then again, one foot comes up, just the one. Hold, look forward. Then again, maybe 2 feet, and then what happens is they lean forward and then they go back immediately, okay? and then the next time more. So it's progressively training them through all of that. So a lot of skill in arm balances. Hader?
What did we say the strength was for this? That you need for the in terms of the plank and holding it and so on. You need quite a significant amount, right?
If somebody, you see, the thing is, it's tricky. Again, as a general rule, if you're teaching a class, if people can hold a 5 to 10 second plank that looks like a rigid plank, not that they're about to explode and collapse onto the ground, you're all good for arm balances, okay? Also, what happens most of the time with arm balances is people actually, they take themselves out of the arm balance, right? So because of the fear factor, even if they've got enough strength, they're too nervous to do it. So they might just get, if you get them to a point where they can just lean forward, then they might actually go, okay, I'm just there, but I don't want to go any further. Like, they often won't risk it anyway. So you don't really have to worry too much about strength. Very few people actually will go up and then fall flat on their face. Sometimes happens, sadly, but it does, but very rarely. So I would just say good, solid plank, side plank, all of those things, and you're all good to go with arm balances. Okay, but a lot of skill requirement in them, okay? So you can see, so we've looked at splits. Now, how many of you know what, I think you guys call it hurdlers. It's Ekapada Kundiyasana 2. I'm very Sanskrit mind. I don't know what, hardly any of the new names are. So does anybody know, I didn't tell you to look at it, does anybody know what hurdler's pose is as an arm balance? No?
Side crow with your legs straight, isn't it?
It's literally splits on your arm. Okay, so the other one is twisted hurdlers. So I asked you guys to look, let's talk about that first and I can take you to that. So if I asked you guys to look at Parshvabhakasana, twisted crow. Okay, so crow in a twist, and then the pose after that is where you straighten your legs out, which is what I think Stefan's talking about. Okay, so that's twisted hurdler. All right, actual hurdler is where you put your legs into splits on your arms. So then we'd have to look and go, do they have the requirement of splits? Where do they put, it's only on one arm, makes it different. Where is the shelf? How do we sequence for that? But so if we look at twisted crow and twisted hurdlers, right? What are the flexibility requirements for the twisted hurdlers or twisted crow, whichever, it doesn't really matter. Let's do twisted crow. What are the flexibility requirements out of 5? What's the shape? This is always about the shape. So 4, so what flexibility? So Kile, you were going to say something. I just saw a hand, but I didn't see. So 2, okay?
It's 2 to 3.
3, so we've got a whole variety of stuff. Okay, so what shape? Always thinking about pretty much all arm balances, you're in some kind of spinal flexion. So your spine's a little bit rounded or sometimes a lot rounded, okay? So what are the legs doing? What are poses that look similar to twisted crow, but not on your arms?
Twisted chair pose.
Twisted, I didn't see who said that. Was it Shakira? I don't know who said that. Twisted chair, right? Most of you have done twisted chair, where you go down, look very similar. Anything else?
Triangle.
No. Do you mean twisted triangle?
Yes, for legs.
For legs. Okay, so you're on the right track. Think about what shape are the legs in twisted crow. If they're similar to, I didn't know who said it, but somebody said twisted chair. So what is in twisted chair, what are the legs doing? Simple stuff, just simple. They're bending.
They're bending.
They're bent. So, and in twisted crow, what are the legs doing? Bent. right? So if we were to look at twisted triangle, what's another pose? It's kind of sort of like twisted triangle, but the legs are bent, or the one leg is bent.
Twisted side angle.
Yes, twisted side angle. Okay, so definitely on the right track, Dasher. It's just that we don't need hamstring flexibility for twisted crow. We just got our legs bent. So having your legs bent, so twisted, extended side angle, twisted crescent lunge, all of those things are shapes that are quite similar to twisted crow that aren't on your arms. Okay, so tell me what mobility, flexibility is required for something like twisted chair, twisted side angle, twisted crescent lunge, all of those kind of things. How much mobility? Yeah, there you go. So Stefan's saying 2. So Dasha, why do you think 4?
Because I find it difficult, I guess.
So yes, but you might, so then that's excellent, because what it means is that if you find those poses difficult, what you then have to do is go, why? What is difficult about those poses, right? So if we were to look at flexibility requirements of twisted crow, right? We could simply, and I'm going to do it seated, okay? I've got this funny new camera, I don't want it to fall off, okay? I can literally just bring my knee into my chest and do this, okay? Everybody do this now. Bring your knee into your chest, wherever you are, and then twist to the side. See if you can bring your upper arm on your upper thigh. Can you? I can't
No.
see. Can you? Yes? Yeah?
Yeah.
So Dasha, try it. Turn around, just one leg up, turn around and twist to the side. Yes. Really
Sorry,
snuggle in and twist.
Sorry, I wasn't following. Now my daughter was calling me. Sorry.
Okay, let's do it again. It's absolutely good. So all I'm doing it to the side so I can show you. All I'm doing is I'm bringing my knee up. I'm on a chair, okay? And then I'm going to take my arm up and I'm going to reach over and bring my upper arm on my upper thigh. Can everybody do that? Yes.
Yes.
Okay? Yes. So pretty much for most people, the flexibility required to get you into that shape, always go to the simplest first, okay? To get you into that shape, it's there, right? For most people. The only time it really isn't there is if girth gets in the way, all right? That can mean a bigger tummy, somebody is pregnant, bigger thighs, and they literally can't get there because stuff's in the way. Pretty much everybody else can get there, right? So we know then that twisted crow on your arms doesn't require very much flexibility, okay? The best thing is every time with arm balances, look at the shape, then try and recreate the shape without making any effort whatsoever. So Dasha was coming up with the twisted crescent lunge version. Dasha was saying that she finds that tough, and it is tough, but it may not reflect the toughness of crow. It may be tough because it's a bit of a balance. It may be tough because your quads are working really hard, a lot of other reasons. So the best thing is to go, like we said yesterday when we looked at crow, and the simplest way of going, can somebody create that shape of the body and the legs for crow is child's pose with your knees apart. And the minute you can do that, you go, okay, we've got that. But when you're doing firefly, then to recreate that flexibility shape, you need to be able to fold forward in a wide-legged forward fold quite significantly. So that requires big flexibility. Is it making a little bit of sense? So you can find those really, really simple poses, recreate the shape, and then go, oh, I can't even go further than 90 degrees in a seated forward fold. I can go to about there, right? 90 and a little bit more, okay? So we work it like that. So twisted crow, normal crow, all of those things don't require that much flexibility. So let's talk about strength for twisted crow. How much strength do we need? 5. Nicole saying 5. Yeah, so it's the same as firefly. It's a slightly different thing because in twisted crow, like in Bakasana, beginner's Bakasana, your arms are bent. So we've created this shelf, which makes it easy for us. Has everybody seen a picture of full Bakasana? They call it crane in English, where the arms are dead straight and people have just got their knee to their upper arm. So it looks, it's like that, okay? Rather than a bent thing, it's like that. And that's much harder, okay? So anything with your arms bent in an arm balance is easier than a straight arm balance. Straight arm's tough because you don't have a shelf. Okay, what about the skill required for twisted crow? Out of 5.
Also quite high.
Also quite high. Exactly. And it's quite high because what do we have to get the people to do?
To focus.
Focus, always the same stuff. Focus.
Balance.
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 Leaning.
Leaning. Leaning. And in twisted crow, in crow, we go forward, right? You guys all know that. But in twisted crow, we're this way, so we go diagonally. Okay? It's a different way of leaning forward, right? And we have to teach them where they have to put their shins on their arm. The version that comes after that, Ekapada Kundiyasana 1, which is twisted hurdlers, you're in crow and you straighten out your legs. Okay, so you straighten out your legs in a twist. It doesn't require very much flexibility. It's just taking it a little bit further. So what happens, what's the difference between having our knees bent in twisted crow and then straightening them out? What is this called when we take things out?
Adding load.
Adding load, yes, well done. So we're extending the lever, right? And that can make it just that little bit harder. All right, so we've looked at the shape of that. What else do I want to look at? So we've gone through that. Okay, and this was something Julie asked. She couldn't be here today. So let's look at hip external rotation poses because they don't really come into too many things. They come into lots of things, but they're kind of their own category. Okay, so give me a pose that is a big hip external rotation pose.
What if,
Lotus.
Lotus, yeah. Anything else?
Tree pose.
Which, sorry, somebody said?
Tree pose.
Tree pose, yeah. But tree's easy, right? Everybody can do trees. What about fire log? Does everybody know what fire log is? We talked about it yesterday a bit, where you've got one leg on top of the other, and your shin is parallel to the front of the mat. It's damn hard, right? Really hard for most people. Okay? Some people, their hip sockets just work like that, and they can fold forward and be there all day long. Other people are like, no, this is crazy hard, don't like it. Okay, so then I asked you to look at Ekapada Galavasana, flying pigeon. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday, okay? So, flying pigeon, what shape is the leg in? We chatted a bit about it yesterday. Somebody said
Front leg or the back leg?
the front leg. The flexibility.
The external
Hip external rotation.
It is an external rotation, definitely, but what shape? Sorry, Stefan?
I know I said external rotation.
Oh, you said external.
Pigeon shape.
Pigeon shape, but even more than pigeon shape, because pigeon shape, the leg. Again, you break up when you speak, sorry. Stefan?
Figure 4.
Figure 4. The leg is in figure 4, perfect. okay? The leg is in figure 4. So we then can use figure 4 before we even get into the tricky business of actually balancing on your arms to determine whether you or your client has the range of motion in hip external rotation to do flying pigeon, okay? And that we can do in lots of ways. We can sit on our bum and just take the leg into the cradle, okay? Take the leg into the cradle and then go, okay, I can do this really easy, or no, this is crazy hard, I can't do it. We can do it in looking at fire log. If someone can do fire log really easy, cradle floor is like a doddle for them. We can look at it. Somebody said yesterday, I can't remember who it was, we can do it in pigeon, but we take the leg a little bit further forward, okay? We can do it in loads and loads and loads of things to determine whether there's enough flexibility for that pose. So you can see crow, child's pose, firefly, wide-legged forward fold, twisted crow, any kind of little twist that you can sit down and do a twist, you can do a twisted chair, all of those things. Flying pigeon, cradle fall type movement, we'll be able to assess the flexibility requirements for the pose. So how much flexibility out of 5 do you think, what's it called, my Sanskrit name, firefly needs? Like that. 4, yeah. So yes, Nicole, it's, yeah. So we know it's quite a big flexibility pose. So if your leg isn't in that position, you're not going to get into the pose, okay? So if my leg is, let's take it into tree pose. If I can only take it out a little bit to the side, I'm going to have difficulties because then I can't create a shelf. The minute I can get my leg to this shape, right? Okay, I can only do one hand because I'm holding the other foot and standing up. I can create the shelf. There's the shelf. But if my leg's dropped like that because of hip external rotation, I can't create the shelf. I can create maybe 1, but certainly not 2. Leg up like this, I can get both arms on it. Okay? So that makes sense. And then we've got the same skill levels, 4, 5. Where do you put it? How do you hook the foot? Where do you look? Where do you lean? All of those kind of things. And then Ekapada Galavasana, flying pigeon, I beg your pardon, adds another element. What's the back leg doing?
It's extending backwards.
It's like hovering
Hamstring stretch.
It's hovering backwards. It's suspended mid-air, right? So, and that makes the pose even harder, okay? So even harder. So what poses can we look at if we were training people in a class to get that same action? And normally what happens in flying pigeon, for those that can't do it yet, is normally what happens is we get the front leg into the position, the arms into the position, we lean forward, and then we bend the back leg into our chest, and then we take it back up in the air. So where could we do that in our yoga sequencing, in a class? Well, where could we do that where it would look similar? That tuck, and then the taking of the leg back.
Warrior 3.
Warrior 3, standing split. Where else? Even more basic. Where else do we go?
Your pigeon pose, your normal seated pigeon pose.
Not really, because we can't tuck the back leg in pigeon. Okay?
Fine.
Sorry.
So from reclined figure 4, kicking the leg out and bringing it in.
We definitely do that, yes. And our basic one, somebody's just said, downward dog. Okay? All of you guys do this all the time. People go, bring your knee in towards it's like a little core movement, round your back, bring your knee in, maybe bring your knee to your upper elbow, and then take the leg back, 3-legged dog. Done. Okay? So that doesn't mean the person's going to be able to do it in flying pigeon, okay? Because when you do that in downward dog to three-legged dog, little core thing, and then back up you go. Pretty much everybody can do that. What you're doing there is creating the action, the skill around the pose. The minute that you do that in pigeon, and when Laura takes you through all these arm balances, if you can't do them already, you will understand. The minute you pick up that back leg into your chest, it's really hard. People collapse down on the ground. So you have to have serious strength to do the back leg. So in flying pigeon compared to crow, you need more strength. You definitely need 5 strength. The minute you get that back leg up and take it back, what is it called when we take something out? Okay, when we take it out. So I've got it into I've got it on the ground, then up and then out. I'm adding serious load, levers and load. And it's much, much harder because I'm going forward and it's going backwards. So then I become less of a seesaw and I become this shape, which is really makes it tough. So you have to, when you take that leg back, push with all your might into the ground to stop yourself from collapsing into a big heap on the floor. Okay? So it requires a lot of strength. So you can see they all require different things. We've covered a whole load of different shapes: external rotation, forward bending, twisting, arm balances of different varieties, okay? All of them fit in quite nicely, and you guys are going to understand them quickly. And then just before we go, I don't want to keep you guys late, the only thing that doesn't really fit into these things are back bends. Okay, so back bend, normally with arm balances, you can go, what's the leg, what are the legs doing? How do I recreate that to see whether I can do that? Some of them require a lot of flexibility, others don't require any. Okay, it's really simple to kind of work it out, right? The back bends are, before I go to back bends, inversions are arm balance. Everybody know what inversions are. So that is a headless headstand in arm, you'll learn it soon. Handstands, forearm balance, headstand or headless headstand as we teach it, okay? Stuff where you're upright like this on your arms, pretty much, okay? There's lots of variations of them. You can be in back bends, you can stick your legs in lotus, you can do a whole load of things. But fundamentally, they are upright things on your arms. So let's just talk about handstand. How much strength out of 5 do you think handstand needs?
What?
5. All your strength.
5.
Do you think that chaturanga or handstand requires more strength?
Chaturanga.
Chaturanga, good answer. Okay, so the funny thing about handstand is it doesn't actually require that much strength, okay? It does, but it's strength that you don't think it would require, okay? In order to, we just have to be able to hold a plank to be able to do a handstand in strength terms. Because in handstand, we're stacked like this, okay? The minute, if we stand upright, just stand upright, how much strength does it take us to stand upright? None, right? None, okay? Obviously, it's different because we're on our arms. It doesn't require very much strength at all. It requires, if you can hold a plank for comfortably 15 seconds, you've got enough strength for a handstand, okay? It doesn't require much strength. Chaturanga, doing a puppet, requires way more strength, okay? Handstand balance or doing press to handstand, those very tricky ways of getting up, they require more strength, okay? But an actual handstand kick up, it's more a confidence thing. If you can walk up the wall, Laura's going to take you through them, or and hold, it's kind of like a plank on the wall, you're there. You've got enough strength for handstand. The rest of it is predominantly with handstand, and I'm going to not make you guys guess because we're running out of time. Handstand and inversions are largely skill poses. okay? They require flexibility because when you have got nice flexy hamstrings, you can walk in closer and it's easier to kick up, okay? So if and again, I apologize, I'm not warm. Check if you can see me. Okay, so if I haven't got very long hamstring, okay, and I'm down on my hands here, and my legs are here, because I can't walk in anymore, that means I have to kick up so hard to get up, okay? If I can walk in really closely, because I'm quite flexible, it means I just have to go, yeah. Okay, so it's literally flexibility work. This is also for sequencing. Skill work, a lot of skill, okay, especially to balance, and building up a little bit of strength to give you confidence that your arms aren't going to collapse. Okay, so inversions are largely skill-based. They are very, very hard to learn. They take a long, long, long time, and often, in my opinion anyway, are either just offered in the middle of a class and go, oh, just do it if you can, or can't. There's almost no way you can learn inversions without the wall. Pretty much everybody, unless you've done it from when you were a kid. Okay? That's the way it works. You have to train and train and train. So they're very large skill-based work with flexibility elements because it just makes it easier to kick up, right? So the biggest thing in inversions like arm balances, fear, right? Really scared of falling over. Okay, and if your hamstrings aren't that long, flexible, I shouldn't say long, okay? Your legs are much further away. So you have to use so much momentum to get up there, and that's really scary. And what you will find, and when Laura goes through inversions with you, is people will come to the trainings and they will go, you crazy woman, do not make me do a handstand. I don't want to, it's scary. I don't like it. I don't want to go upside down. So normally when we're live, I teach you all the arm balances and the handstands, and then Laura does all of the other stuff. So what we do then is people go, we do it with everybody in the room. We make people walk up the wall. So they've put their hands on the ground, like in plank arms, and then they walk their feet up the wall. I have never, ever seen one person not be able to walk up the wall, even if it's just for a brief moment because they haven't got confidence in their arms yet. They can walk up the wall. So then what it tells me is they're not scared of the inversion. They're not scared of going upside down. What are they scared of? Can you guess? Sakila? Yes, she's doing this. Falling over. And they're not scared of falling over when they walk up the wall. When they face, does everybody understand what I mean by walking up the wall? And I'm facing the wall, like in a plank sort of shape, and I kind of walk up the wall. Most people can do that, even if they're a little bit shaky with that. 2 weeks of making them go hold plank and they rock it. They're absolutely fine. They're scared of falling over, but they're not scared of falling over when they're walking up the wall. They're scared of falling over when they kick up. The momentum, okay? That's the scary thing. That's the skills that you have to work with. So in your pose analysis, if you're choosing an inversion and you're nervous about inversions, there's a whole load of different progressions you can do to work it out. And Laura will talk about it more, and so will I. Okay, so lastly, and just very quickly, the back bends. All different. We talked about this yesterday. I can't remember, somebody was asking. We were talking about spinal extension, right? And what stops your spine from bending?
Bone on bone.
Bone on bone, right? Bone on
Vertebra.
bone. Vertebra, yes. Bone on bone. Don't like it. Your ribs and your vertebra, okay? Just goes, this is the way I'm shaped. Go away. You're stopping here. You cannot force it. You just can't. It's like, you know, people say, oh, you're going to injure a disc. You're gonna. way before that, your bone will go burn and your back will go, I do not like this, stop it, okay? So with all back bends, we have to look at the other things that we can work, right? Which are what? Take wheel. Let's talk wheel again. What areas would we look at to see how our bodies work and how we could maybe help improve our back bend?
Shoulder flexion.
Shoulder flexion. Okay, so how much flexibility do you think out of 5? Shoulder flexion, and we know it's hips as well. Okay, hips not so much in wheel, but shoulder flexion. How much flexibility do we need for wheel out of 5? So it's 4, 5. It's a goodly amount, right? Yes, because if somebody's just over here, their wheel is almost going to be like a reverse plank, but with their arms over their head. Okay, it's going to be really hard, and they probably won't be able to get there. What if I can show you on the wall with this new camera thing? They've got to get their hand into that position to push up, right? Okay, you've got to have enough. This is not shoulder flexion. I'm just showing you because the wall's here. You've got to have enough shoulder flexion that your hand gets into pretty much that shape, so you can get your heel of the hand on the ground. Otherwise, you can't push up, right? So if my shoulder flexion is poor, it's going to be here. I don't know if you guys can see me, but the heel of my hand's not on the ground. Okay? It's not on the ground. So that's going to make it absolutely horrendous to push up. Okay? So with wheel, and Laura will also show you these things, is, you know, somebody's got that level of shoulder flexibility, we can do things like put them on blocks, put their hands on blocks, so it takes a little bit of that need for the flat hand on the wall out of it, and help them up with straps, those kind of things. But it is super tough if you don't have the shoulder flexibility requirements. What about strength? Strength requirements. Yeah, Stefan? 4, 3, 4. Yeah. Where? What strength do we need?
Arms.
Wrists.
Wrist. Yeah, strength in wrist, definitely. But in terms of just like a bog standard, almost like if you were thinking about personal training, it's a push-up, right? Okay? Not this horizontal push-up, but it's this above your head, pushing up, and it requires a significant amount of strength. The great thing about wheel is, though, instead of it just being, think about if I did this upside down, this would be a handstand push-up, which I'm sure you've seen the CrossFitters do, right? That's a handstand push-up. That's really hard. I can't do that, and I'm fairly strong. I'd like to be able to do it. So, Sakila, I think you must train me. I want to be able to do it. Okay? So that's really strong. But in wheel, we've got your legs as well. So when we push up with our arms, and we push up with our legs. Okay? So those are the 2 elements. But what amount of strength do you think the legs need to have to be able to push the hip up? Yeah, like
So the quads would need some strength.
Yes, exactly. So it's a push up, quads, glutes, hamstrings are pushing you up, holding you there. Quads are being stretched. Okay, but we can definitely do that in a lot of other poses, and most people have enough strength in their legs. It's more an awareness of, you know, using the legs, because a lot of people, especially when their shoulder flexion is a bit restricted, they forget, because it's hard. So they forget that the legs are there to help them. Okay, so what level of skill do you think wheel would need?
4, 5.
4, 5, yeah. So, you know, wheel is such a commonly offered pose, not taught pose, but offered pose, but it's quite a chunky pose. It requires a significant amount of shoulder flexion. The lucky people with spinal extension can just stay there all day long, right? It requires a significant amount of push-up strength, and it requires a lot of skill. Like, where are you going to put your arms? In all the years that I've taught wheel, so many people do it, and their brain goes, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Like, okay, I've got my hands here. What do? Because how many people out there have actually put their hands here and pushed up? Oh, unless you've done gymnastics or whatever before, not many, right? So it's a skill-based thing, the looking at your feet as well. Okay, one more back bend and then we'll go. So everybody know what full dances is? You know, so it's kind of like your mermaid where your foot's on your head. So you're standing. So it's not half dances where you take this thing, the hand behind and take hold of your foot and then you'll, you know, arm out in front. It's where your arms are over your head and you either got a strap or if you're flexing enough, just you, and you're holding your foot behind you. Okay. What level of flexibility does that pose require? 5. I think 10. Yeah, I really think that is one of the most flexibility required poses that we have got. All right. So not only do we have to have massive shoulder flexion to take the arms back, what other flexibility requirements do we need? Somebody's patting. Quads. Okay, that back leg, you've all felt it in mermaid, pretty much, unless you're super, super, super flexy, right? What happens when you bring that foot towards your back or your arm? Ow, 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 quad stretch, quad stretch, quad stretch on a grand scale. So full dancers is crazy quad stretch, okay? What else does full dancers need? So it's got the back leg that's coming up. So it's got shoulder flexion, spinal extension, quad stretching, okay? So hip extension. What about the standing leg?
Hamstring strength.
It's strength and being stretched as well. So the hamstrings are being stretched. So if, I wish I had a picture for you here. If you look at full dancers and you kind of put the person horizontally, full dancers is, and we do it in mermaid as well, full dancers is like being in splits, bending your back leg and putting your foot on your head. Okay, it's called, so mermaid in Sanskrit is called Ekapada, I beg your pardon, I've forgotten, Ekapada Raja Kapotasana. Okay, so, and we have 4 versions of those. The one that you're working in isn't even version 1. Okay, if you're just doing the, you know, mermaid one where you hook your arms. Okay, so version 1 is where we're holding the foot behind with strap or with your arm. The 4th version is in splits, reaching back, taking hold of your foot and putting it on your head. Okay, so those 2 things require massive amounts of flexibility, strength, like Stefan says, in the standing leg, even shoulder strength, because you actually have to hold your leg up. So you can see that the back bends require just different stuff, right? You have to look at the spinal extension is what it is. Okay, your spinal extension is what it is. It is unlikely to improve if you're feeling that bone on bone. What you can improve or work around is shoulder flexion, possibly extension, but most of you've got it, and what your quad stretching in your legs. Okay, so there's a pose, I don't know if you've seen it, called Kapotasana. So you're on your knees and people drop back and put their, not me, Laura probably, they put their head on their feet. Okay, so that requires almost nothing with your arms. They do hold their feet as well, but not too much. It requires a massive amount of quad stretching, but there's nothing you can do around the spinal extension. It just is what it is. Okay, all right. So that was a hell of a lot of information. You've got this to watch, you've got a lot of other stuff. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to slot in, I'm not on for next week, but I probably will come in and talk about sequencing because I think you're ready, right? So any questions about pose analysis, please ask, right? If you want to choose your poses early, please do. It'll save you because the workload towards the end of the course is a lot. Okay? The most workload is the sequence. It's going to take you a long time, right? So start thinking around that. But I think you are there. The understanding is there. All right. Okay. Go and have a nice lunch. ask questions, and enjoy your arm balances this afternoon. Okay. All right, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thanks. Bye.
Bye.